this is great. Thank you all for joining us for our Global Viewpoints Forum. I see we have about 14 people online right now, and they represent friends of Noé's, I think, alumni from our various programs, Global Youth Village, Tech Girls, all different places, and also just supporters, people that have either given us good advice or trained or a variety of things. So we're really grateful that everybody is joining us now, and we'll probably continue to pick up numbers of people as we go. So these events happen every Thursday, where this is our first in June of the series. And we're really grateful that the topic happens to be what it is, because it's very, very timely. So we want to thank you, Noé, for being who you are and for always being a youth voice out there and promoting youth voices in the public sector. So I'm going to let Mr. Ash go ahead with your opening, and Bernie will take it away from here, Noé, okay, as your facilitator.
Thank you, Mary. Good afternoon, good evening, good day, bonjour. Welcome back to Legacy International's Global Viewpoints Forum, creating a new tomorrow today. And today we have the joy of hearing from Noé Petitjean, an alumnus of Legacy International, one of the 10 global youth leaders recognized in 2018 by the United States Department of State through a program initiated under the tenure of Secretary of State John Kerry, the Emerging Young Leaders Program. As conflicts ignite, and literally and symbolically, not only in the United States, but around the world, sparked by the death of George Floyd and exacerbated by so many other deaths and acts of bigotry focused on people of color, we have to forge a pathway to a new beginning, a road that will lead humanity to humaneness and care and concern for others, a road of peace and a global society that is peaceful and patient and tolerant, led by people who can see the injustices that surround them, respond appropriately, express their yearning for equality, and struggle individually and act collectively to overcome divisiveness by affirming unity of values and respect for a rule of law that is truly just and truly compassionate. Change has to be as endemic as the problem motivating that change. Creating and sustaining peace requires not only sustained effort, but also a common personal understanding, the experience of what the benefits of peace truly are. Protesters, individuals across generational, secular, spiritual, racial, ethnic, cultural, and social divides have poured into the streets around the world, putting health, life, and limb at risk in order to affirm the imperative for change. They have taken the responsibility to awaken humanity during a time of multiple crises, exercising the rights and the power of justice for all and peace for all, equal opportunity for all. Led by youths across the globe, we have once again been given an opportunity to listen and to join and to act for common well-being and righteousness, a chance to implement new policies, educate the masses, transform society. The question is, will we rise to seize this opportunity when so much is at stake, when darker forces have converged and seem to prevail globally? Racism, global climate change, and COVID-19 pandemic, let alone the other local and regional issues such as authoritarianism and anarchy, attack the rule of law and hence security and safety and peace. For over 4 decades,
I'm gonna do it now. So.
Excuse me, are you hearing me?
Yes, please go ahead.
For over 4 decades, Legacy International has been committed to peacemaking, conflict prevention and resolution, intergenerational teams of excellence, preparing the next generation of leaders. Countless meetings and trainings have been convened to address these problems by creating sustainable and values-based solutions. And we will continue, inshallah, to meet the challenges of the present in standing with and offering our experience and our knowledge to the leaders of a new, more just and inclusive world, a world that benefits all people of all genders, races, beliefs, and nationalities. I firmly believe that to affirm the underlying purpose and mission of human life is to find peace and to guarantee security and safety for all will prevail. There is no more noble purpose than to offer or to submit ourself, our life, for that goal, to affirm the overriding principle of diversity and unity, which needs to be at the core of educational curriculums and the basis for civil discourse, civil action. The global reality demands this of us. I was Noah's age when I engaged in the civil rights movement here in the United States, having the life-changing experiences that formed the basic foundation for Legacy International. My experience of marching with and listening to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and then later living in India and sitting with, talking with, meditating with followers of Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru transformed and focused my life. In both experiences, I learned the value of self-reflection and faith in humanity and a higher power, trust and submission through nonviolence. I learned this incredible power of love for one's fellow human being and the transformative force of that love for oneself and all humanity. I learned that we all have something to learn and a lot to unlearn before we can learn something. Sometimes many things to change in ourselves, and that there's someone inside of each of us that can and will make a difference in this world if we work to serve and we resist those darker forces within and outside ourselves. I learned that we can turn darkness into light, loss into gain. We can engage in society, take leadership roles, create new laws and policies, remove from leadership the ones who are selfish and narcissistic, authoritarian and greedy, as well as the ones who would disrupt just for the sake of creating chaos. Individuals that keep humanity on a trajectory to destruction must be replaced with visionaries, practical idealists, I call them, like so many of you are, who we at Legacy International have had the joy and the honor to serve and work alongside. Yes, this is a critical time for our new youth leaders and for all of us. So let's join together and to overcome adversity and replace it with opportunity. Welcome to creating a new world, a new tomorrow today with Noe Petitjean. Bernie, it's up to you now, and I'll say goodbye later.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rash, for those words. And we're really excited to welcome Mr. Noé Petitjean. He's a senior in social sciences at the Amsterdam University College, and he's going to begin his master's degree in peace and conflict studies at Uppsala, University of Uppsala, as Mr. Rash was saying. And that's just a really phenomenal program that's well known in political science research across the United States as well. Noé is an outstanding young leader dedicated to cross-national community building, and he's participated in 2 exchange programs supported by the U.S. Department of State. So in 2015, he participated in the Benjamin Franklin Transatlantic Summer Institute on Diplomacy, Journalism, Democracy. And in 2017, he was an emerging young leader, the EYLA, hosted by Legacy International. He's also traveled to Oslo to learn about youth and sustainable development, and to Kosovo in 2019 to learn about peace and peacemaking, and has presented at several conferences on these topics at UNESCO and the Peace Palace in The Hague. And since 2015, his investigation of youth agency has taken him around the world to meet young change makers, like many of you, in various fields, in various conflict and peaceful environments. And we have the pleasure of being joined by one of these colleagues of Noé, Mr. Dieudonné Gakira, another outstanding international youth leader who is going to briefly share his story of youth advocacy and hope to guide us before Noé begins. And I'll hand it over to Noé to introduce Mr. Dieudonné Gakira. So Noé, whenever you. Oh, I think you're muted, Noé.
Mute. Now
There
is it
you
better?
are.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Ash, for this introduction. Thank you, Bernadette, for this very eloquent presentation. I hope to be up to the standards now. So this session is called You Matter to Me, because you matter to me is a sign of hope and brotherhood. And it's what we all need right now into those very difficult moments. It's the answer to most conflicts, at least, hope and brotherhood, hope and fraternity. And I hope that through this presentation, Dieudonné and I are able to share with you our hopes, to make you hope, also to show you that it is possible, even in the darkest and the hardest times, to make a change, to invest a bit of yourself and share your story. This session is about storytelling, and it's about the importance of storytelling and the crucialness of storytelling for peace building. And so I encourage you after this session to share the stories you have heard, to share your stories, but also to learn to listen to people's stories, and a whole world of wonders will open to you. Yeah, and I would like to leave the floor now to my dear friend Dieudonné Gakire, who has taught me a lot in this past year and a half since we know each other. And I hope he can teach you as much as he taught me and as much as he will be teaching me in the future. So yeah, Dieudonné, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Noe. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Just before starting, I would like to take you back in my childhood. My parents used to tell me that the light is meant to illuminate. And I always agree to that by saying nobody could ignore it. By now, I have realized that I was not aware of its real meaning. So if I have not lived in darkness, I could have not seen the light. So as Noah mentioned, my name is Dieudonné Gakire. I'm also a student at Amsterdam University College in social science, focusing on international relations. And what I want to share with you is under this title, From Survival to Life. I survived the genocide happened in Rwanda, which means at least I tested the limit of life. And it's not a story I enjoy to share, but because I hope it can save some lives and heal people and even promote humanity, I decided to share my story, and by now also believe that it can contribute something to end discrimination, the racism, and also violence. So and it's dedicated as my life to the peacemakers, to those who risk their lives to save other lives, and to our brother George Floyd, because yes, as you can all agree with me, without justice there is no peace, and I'm studying for the prosperous life, for development, and without peace, I can't do anything. We can't achieve anything. That's why also I decided to dedicate this to this brother of ours. So this is my philosophy. I told you why I decided to share my story, and what really changed my life is through this saying. So Ubuntu is a Kinyarwanda, my local language, but also South Africa, which means I am because you are. I'm a human being because you are also a human being. That's why we need to care one another. And other South African saying is umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu, which means a person is a person because of other people. And for me, I can't be happy when my neighbors, when my friends, when other people share life, I'm not happy. And Noah mentioned something important about the power of storytelling, and we have this in our culture, in our saying, encouraging us to share the story. And the saying is ukize inkuba arayiganira, which means in English that to escape the danger is to speak about it. it is important to share even the story of sad side of humanity, so that we could learn something from it. Yeah, in the beginning of this session, it was mentioned about this is because we care today and tomorrow, and in our language we have this word Asia, which means yesterday and tomorrow at the same time. And for me also the past is important, if we want to really build a shared future. And now it's very sad that it seems we don't learn from our yesterday mistakes, and something we could really care about it, to learn from yesterday's mistakes in order to build a peaceful tomorrow. My activities is under two projects. One is about my book, A Dreaming Child, which is about how the genocide happened in Rwanda affected the children during and after genocide. And my book stands for love, truth, and justice. I wanted to share the voices of children, the children who survived the genocide, the children of perpetrators. No one mentioned even the dark moment. We could try to draw strength, hope from it to teach others. So that's what I wanted to achieve. Even if children were killed, innocent children were attacked, were hunted to be killed, but at least those who managed to survive, they have a message of hope to the world, to the future. And it's also reminding the people who wanted to kill me, who killed my brothers, my parents, my friends, that they didn't know me. They didn't realize that I'm a person as they are. They didn't care about humanity. They didn't care about the future, the peace. It's also a reminder to everybody who is now being involved in a violence, in a hatred and racism things, to know we are all the same, we are all one people. Other project is a Dreaming Child Center. Of course, when I grew up as a survivor, I was just thinking to fight for survivors only. But I was also very angry. But after I realized that cultivating anger in my heart, it is not a best solution to that. And I decided to come up with this center, to start with the children, with the young people, because they are not biased, and for them it is easy to reconcile with the history, and easy to forgive and ask also forgiveness when it is necessary. So I came up with this center to give the children, uh, without without care if they are Catholic, they are Hutu, they are Tutsis, or their skin color, just their children, they need the opportunity. And I went to my home village, because it's where there is no opportunity for the children, and I brought opportunity for them, so that they can they can grow up with unity values, and they can also fight for peace and spread the love across the globe. Here's the statistics of survivors of the genocides that I survived. And this is to show the consequences of hatred, of violence, of racism. This is one example. When you see what is happening in the US or anywhere, in many places around the globe, we can find many examples of the result of silence. There is hatred, there is violence, there is racism on one side, but it is also the silence of other people. And this is one example. The US is another example what is happening now about the white supremacy and all inequality in general. And this is the situation after the genocide. We are now talking about the violence. Maybe whatever to show that you are around, that you need to be recognized. I don't recommend violence. But when violence, I also never agree or support that violence is the solution. But when there's nothing to do about it, this is also the result. This is for instance, the result of the genocide, of violence in my country. You can see the people who became refugees, the perpetrators who supposed to face the justice. You know, the country was really broken, and it was the complete restart was needed. So those people who are silent now, those people who are saying no to me, it's others, it's far away, it's also important to realize and to think that also, even when I don't do anything, when I don't speak anything to show the solidarity or to end all these heinous acts, that you will also, the consequences will also come to you. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gakira, for sharing your experience and your message of hope. I'll bring it back to Noah.
Okay, I haven't muted myself. Thank you, Dieudonné. Thank you so much. So today is about storytelling, and now you just heard the story of Dieudonné. And my idea in my research was that, you know, I am Belgian. I'm one of the privileged people in this world. But what I can do is I can listen. I can listen and I can use my knowledge. I can use my facilities to share the stories of other people. And what you're going to see now are the results of a research that was inquiring the experience of young people who went through conflict situations. And the question was that, what would shape the behaviors of those young people? And the way to go about that was to inquire about the stories of young people, listen to their story, give them a voice to speak, and allow them to explain what they are expecting from the adults and from the power makers in conflict environments. And so increasingly it has become time to listen to young people, to listen to the stories of the people we assume the stories of too often, and to really act upon those stories. So this is an invitation for you to listen and to share your stories through the main question: how do young people perceive their agency in conflict environments? Putting young people right back at the seat of the table, at the center of the issue, because peace is generational. So why youth agency? Well, youth agency is essential to the sustainability of peace accords. You cannot build peace if you don't include the youth in it. If the youth is systematically excluded, the same way if one people is systematically discriminated and excluded from a society, it will turn violent, because that's the only place and one of the only places where those young people can find their place. It's where they belong if you don't include them. And so it becomes increasingly important to listen to those stories and to share your stories. And if you are a young person who knows stories about someone in conflict situations, or yourself have experienced conflict situation, I would gladly ask you to share your story on the following email address. I will read all of them. And we're currently working with my supervisor and Dieudonné on writing a book about youth stories in conflict environments to really try to echo those experiences. So first we're going to talk about youth agency, and then we have heard about the importance of storytelling from Dieudonné. Then we will have a Q&A session and breakout rooms with some reflection topics, and then a conclusion and last questions. So when you think about agency, it's a very broad term, but essentially we define it as the relation between you and the society. So you and your parents, you and the law, you and the political systems, you and the economy, you and the culture, you and the norms. And so you have you and your group of friends, you and the power. But also agency is the ability to act. So within this system, you as an individual and use in the plural as a group of individuals, what is the power that you have to change things? First, you have the power to change your narrative. Take a stand, make your narrative known, because this is important. It's about your story. And this is already one of the power. Changing the narrative is a start to changing the context. Then we ask, what is a conflict environment? A conflict environment is often understood as an armed confrontation, the state versus someone, rebels versus the states, and there are many examples. And then we usually consider that a conflict is over when a peace accord is signed. And then we label this place a post-conflict country, a post-conflict environment. But a conflict is not over. And a conflict is always there. It was there before people resorted to violence, and the conflict will be there after the violence, because violence is not only physical. Violence is also systemic. It is also structural, depends on the institutions and the people in power and the assumptions and norms that society pertains. And so conflict can be just understood as a contradiction. You negotiate your place in the world, you negotiate your narrative, and your narrative comes in contradiction to other people's objectives and narratives. It's a conflict whose level of violence is low enough that you can manage it with peaceful means and with understanding and dialogue. But when the frustration gets so high and hope is lost, all there is survival and all there is violence. And so a conflict is not only limited to physical violence. And that's very important for this, because many young people live in violent settings that are not classified as conflict simply because there is not physical violence. But it's not the case. You are always in a conflict. It's just a different level of violence and a different level of frustration. And that means that every story is important, because every story is a story of a conflict somehow. Then who are youth? Well, I'd say I'm youth, but there are pretty well-made definitions. The World Health Organization says that it's individuals from 14 to 25 years old. And UN Security Council Resolution 2250, which recognized the role and the importance of young individuals in conflict settings and for radicalization, they say that it's from 19 to 25 years old. Well, I would say that first of all, youth is socially constructed. We have already norms about what should be a children, who should be a children, who should be a youth. What are the rules, what are the rights, what are the responsibilities and the duties they have. As a children, as a young individual under 18, you don't have the same opportunities, the same freedom, the same agency as someone who's above 18. But as a youth, who are you? Well, you are an in-between group. Sometimes you can be considered to be a child, sometimes an adult. So sometimes you benefit from the rights of the child and the autonomy of the adult, but sometimes you don't. And people consider you as a victim because you are a child, or as a perpetrator because you're an adult. So youth is this in-between group that relates both to childhood and to adulthood. A group ranging from more or less 12 to 25, 30 years old, it depends. In a conflict settings, young children are led to assume responsibilities usually bared by adults, such as carer for families, providers for the families, or even sometimes defending their own lives with a weapon. In that case, we cannot strictly bound youth to an age group, but rather to an identification group. Who fits in the in-between group? Who is performing a role that is beyond their age, but are still performing it? Those are the youth. And there is traditionally two narratives, one portraying young people as victims, one portraying young people as perpetrators. The one portraying young people as victims says that the children and youth are individuals that need to be protected. Those are young children and particularly young girls, especially in conflict settings. The children needs to be shielded from the outside society because it's violent. And only when it becomes an adult, it has the strength to face the world. And then the perpetrator view. So in this case, young people poses an issue for society. It's a securitarian perspective. There are many examples in the world. One of them is the Second Intifada. Another one of them is the youth people in the popular neighborhoods, for example, in Algeria, in Alger, or in Paris, or in Amsterdam, in the Bijlmer, which is also a popular neighborhood. So you have everywhere, as to a certain point, think about it in your country, in which neighborhood are young people considered perpetrators? In which neighborhood are young people considered victims? Is it related to an ethnic origin? Is it related to a social status? Is it related to a so-called race? What is it? But is it right? Is it right to call someone only a victim or a perpetrator? Well, it is not, because usually perpetrators are the consequences of structural violence and exclusion. And instead, what we need to do, we need to change narrative, go from a dominative narrative emanating from the UN framework and UN rights framework to a narrative emanating from the academic framework and from the grassroots initiatives, which is a framework that recognizes youth in all of its faces, youth in all of its agencies, young people as peacemakers and troublemakers, and a narrative that seeks to develop peacemakers. Yeah, so we have to recognize the responsibility of youth, their vulnerability, but the most important point is recognize their potential. And then we ask ourselves, well, what shapes youth behavior? What makes you a troublemaker or a peacemaker? And there are mostly two types of factors: structural factors such as exclusion. So if you are normatively considered as a perturbative element, you would behave like one. It's exclusion, systematic exclusion. The other ones are individual factor, and those are your character, your own making, your own convictions. Maybe if your convictions are strong enough, you will be able to fight this exclusion, but only a few individuals make it there. So structural violence is what is the most compelling element here. And it's the most compelling element because it is systemic, because it is in our habits. And some of us don't even realize it. And this systematic exclusion generates radicalization. That is how certain Belgian young individuals found themselves in Syria in the training camps of Daesh. It is because they were systematically excluded from society. No opportunities, no hopes. No one was there to accept them. And if Daesh is the ones who accept you, well, you will go there because at least they give you an importance. And that is what is crucial here, recognition. And so in changing this narrative, in seeking to change this narrative, I told myself, I have to listen to young people who have made these transitions or who have helped this transition from being more or less violent individuals or individuals living in violent contexts to individuals living in peaceful or creating peaceful context. And I found those people in the Emerging Young Leaders Award Network, and I did research with them. And those people are Amel from Algeria, Hannah Tams from Palestine, Danya from Karachi, Pakistan, and Melkin, who's a part of the Skate Brothers community created by the Emerging Young Leader awardee, Hessel. And so all those people shared the story with me, and we highlighted with them 5 important crucial points for youth agency that people, institutions, and individuals need to work on. To answer the question, how do young people perceive their agency in conflict environment? And those 5 points that people need to work on are the feeling of belonging, harvesting hope, developing opportunities, creating safe space, and showing role models. And so now is the time we're going to go into breakout session rooms where different groups will have to think about those different concepts, those different realities, relate to it in their personal life, and also think about how this can be developed. So you're invited here to share your story, because your story will help inform how to develop those teams. There will be also a second group which will focus on a question where we ask you to think about one example of a young person that you know, who before you would consider that they have a negative behavior for your society, for your community, and now are performing a positive action. And I want you to ask yourself, what made them change? What made them now perform this positive action? Try to pinpoint that aha moment, this transition point. Bernadette, it's up to you.
Sure, no problem. So actually, just before the breakout rooms, we just want to give people a little chance to ask questions in a Q&A setting. And then we'll break out into two large groups or two smaller groups that will discuss those questions that Noe mentioned. So we'll just open up the floor to anyone who wants to share either comments or questions or any thoughts that you had, stories that kind of resonate with you when you were listening to this. The floor is open to anyone. Feel free to, jot it in the chat or just unmute yourself.
So Noe, thank you so much. One of the things that I've always been struck by with you, you're 18 when you won the Emerging Young Leaders Award program. You were the youngest to receive it. It's just your encapsulation. So the last 5 themes structure that you put up there about belonging, harvesting hope, opportunities, safe space, and role models is really important. And I think all of your points related to the violence is not the first sign of the conflict, that there's been a lot of predecessors to getting to that point. So I just wanted to thank you because that's so clear. It's very clear. And so now as an adult working with youth all the time, sometimes I need to be reminded of, what are those touch points that are so important to just keep hammering so that there is systematic change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the compliment. Thank you for your feedback.
I see Ishrat. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Noe, thank you very much for your presentation. And I'm going to echo what Mary just said. I'm a professor and I go into the classroom. And quite often, because I'm a professor in Kansas City, and I would say about 20% of the class comes from low-income families and neighborhoods that are not very susceptible to creating opportunities for them. So the five ways that came out of your research, how to influence people or how to create an environment where people would choose from instead of being troublemakers and perpetrators to peacemakers. I think those are really important, and I will be conscious in my classroom, hopefully to create an environment that, creates that feeling of belonging and harvesting hope and creating opportunities and safe space, and of course trying to be a role model. So I will take this 5, and I hope right now your research is based on you showed 4 people, 4 stories, but I would like this research from a researcher's point of view for you to be able to collect much more stories, so that this can have a very strong foundation from where we could all be confident of these 5 things. I mean, intuitively, this is fantastic. This is a great beginning. I hope you'll continue collecting stories and sharing those stories. And I think this is beautiful research. I have, in the last, 30 minutes, I've learned a lot of things. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Professor Ishrat. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's the important part. I want to share stories. I want to listen to those stories because they're forgotten. They are misunderstood. And someone has to sit down and say, tell me about you, tell me what you live, because you matter to me. And you matter to me is the first sign of fraternity, the first sign of humanity, and the first sign of consideration. And because young people need to be acknowledged, people who are suffering need to be acknowledged. Truth has to be told. And if your students in Kansas City are willing to share their stories, I mean, you, professor, and your students are more than welcome to contact me in my email address. Certainly, I hope that this research will take a different turn and will start to branch out to more young individuals or to adults who have experienced, who have similar experiences. Because hearing the stories can save a lot of time. Hearing the story, it's about time we don't impose peace. It's about time we prepare for peace.
I will. So my next classes start in the fall semester, and I will keep a lookout, and I'll talk about these things, and I will encourage people to come and share their stories, and I'll connect them to you if I find someone who you might think.
Yes, there will be my email address also in the following of the session. So just feel free, anyone who has a question, anything, I will read all the emails 100%. I'm 100% committed. Thank you.
And you did a great effort. Thank you. Thank you for your research. You did a great effort.
Thank you.
I just want to say that it always takes me back. Your presentation is beautiful and clear, just as my brother Ishrat said and others have said. I think, my mind goes to two places. One is, and because you know me and you know legacy, it seems to me that it's often very beneficial when a person is telling their story, especially in a group situation, to establish what they hold in common, whether or not they articulate it or live it. I mean, everybody says, for example, they're working for peace, but they can be working for peace through violence, but they espouse the value. All of our values, common values. I wonder how beneficial it is to establish a baseline, articulated baseline of what a person says the value is, whether they're living it or not, to find a place where the narratives meet. Could you comment on that, Nai? If it makes sense to you.
Yeah, it's not very easy for me to answer. What I can say is that to be able to, if I get the intention right, to be able to hear someone's stories, you need trust, you need confidence. And trust and confidence are not a given. You have to fight for them. And the people I interviewed who were from the Emerging Young Leader Award, they're my friends. The qualitative reliability takes a hit, but the results are wonderful. And what I can say is that confidence helped me made it through. But what I can say is that the safe space is the most important. So because Hannah, Dania, Melkin, everyone, Amel, they shared stories that they also heard from their friends. And those stories are shared in a safe space. What is a safe space? A safe space is detached from reality. It's an imaginary space that is acquired through arts, performances, music, cooking, sharing a very physical activity that is yet separated from the reality because it is imaginary. This imaginary space, this safe space, has a particularity of being imaginary, disconnected, and therefore secure and controllable. And those are essential elements to build confidence and trust between two non-confident, between two harmful individuals, because they can be detached. But it's not easy. And people don't enter the safe space like that. You have first to make yourself vulnerable. And there is something very beautiful that Turner said, and he explained that in order to own someone's respect, you have to show your vulnerabilities. And vulnerability is the foundation of human rights. People are different in their hopes and dreams, but they're common in their suffering, sadly. Humankind is common in suffering, but let's use this commonality to understand each other. And that's how you go. That's how you go about it. You show your vulnerability, and recognizing each other's mutual vulnerability leads to sympathy, which leads to empathy, which leads to dialogue and trust. But it's a time-taking process and a painful process. Humility and vulnerability. I would say those are what allow you to share your stories. And this is what I believe has allowed me to hear those stories as well, and to hear them in their true making and not to change them based on the conclusions I wanted to have in my research. I hope I answered your question well.
Yes, you did. And I want to share a personal experience, if you want a story, very briefly. Is when I was at university and I was in the freedom marches, in the second round of freedom marches with Dr. King, you know, what I thought I was doing was not exactly what I was doing. And so there was no real anticipation of real vulnerability as from a personal level. I mean, yes, there was the physical vulnerability of going to the south and getting on a bus, and indeed we were beaten and we were harassed and we were, you know, almost killed at one point. But one of the realizations that I did have upon reflection later was, and of course, what you're talking about is a very basic Sufic teaching that we talk about as vulnerability and trust. This is very basic Sufic teaching, but I wasn't doing that at the time. And what I realized later was that the people we were protesting against, their greatest problem was their fear, their vulnerability of change. And so there was a common sense that we didn't see and they didn't see because the value was not clarified. They were vulnerable to change and we were vulnerable to being the change makers because we were change makers. But I went down there thinking I was doing something really wonderful and great and very driven by my own ego, my own self, of course. Realize that the sacrifice that everybody has to make and to be vulnerable. So I think this is a good example, you know, from my life to talk about a transitional point that you do something for one reason, and it's a good thing that you're trying to do, but you don't realize what the price of that's going to be and how you can sustain it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're actually going to break out into the breakout rooms now. We're just going to have 2 breakout rooms, and Noe is going to lead one of them, and I'm going to lead the other. They're both focusing on what is driving youth behavior, whether that's in a positive way or a negative way. And once we get into the breakout rooms, we'll talk about the specific question. My group, just to give you a little sense of this, is going to think about someone who's had a change of behavior in their life, who went from being, in your eyes, sort of a bad element for society, and today they're now having a positive impact. So what is making that change? And in Noe's group, they're going to look deeper at these 5 themes that he pointed out, 5 things that are sort of driving youth behavior: feeling of belonging, hope, role models, safe space, opportunities, to sort of get at really what's driving youth. So Teresa, feel free to break us out into our breakout rooms and we'll see you guys there. You don't have to do anything except click accept the breakout room. It will bring you into a separate Zoom room. And then once 10 minutes is up, it will bring us all automatically back here. So whenever you're ready, Teresa.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and send you all to your breakout rooms. The questions are also in the chat if you want to refer back to those.
Yvonne.
Hi.
We have Dieudonné.
Yes.
Is it Gakira or Gakire? I feel like I might have mispronounced it.
Gakire.
Gakire. Okay, I got it because it has the accent at the end.
Accent is on Dieudonné. Isn't
Oh,
Dieudonné.
just on the Dieudonné. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. That was, to me, that was like very courageous of you, because it's a story, like you said, that you were sort of hesitant to share, but you did anyway for sort of the purposes of this. And so I'm just going to thank you too for that. So yeah, just to kind of throw out the question there, we're in the group where we're supposed to kind of think of someone who's gone from sort of a bad egg in society. Think of someone you've heard on the news or just in your own life, or maybe it's you know, someone who's gone from sort of this bad egg doing bad things to someone who's making a positive change in society, and what happened. So I'll just kind of start us off. This question really got me thinking about something that happened in my community. I'm like halfway between Boston and New York, and there was a guy who committed a hate crime against a mosque, a Muslim community there. And I mean, it was really just horrible. And he was sent to federal prison. And what happened after that was the group, the Muslim community, actually forgave him for his hate crime. And he was very shocked that they would offer their forgiveness like that. And they were sort of in this space of vulnerability. And he ended up befriending the group and actually joining them in a mission to sort of show who they really are to the rest of the community, that, you know, they're a positive influence. So to me, this was just like amazing that someone can go from this position of bringing hatred to a community to actually advocating for them. So that's just one thought that I had. And some of the things for me that I thought might matter in that case are just like the forgiveness of the Muslim community was just pivotal in that case, because without that, I don't know how else, you know, he would have come to that position. So I'm curious about your stories.
Thank you for sharing this story. It just reminds me of quite a countless conversations I have with my students who are studying the Arab world, culture, and the major issues in that part of the world. But those difficult conversations are the part that people are missing, which is sharing their biases and how they feel about certain group of people. And the things that create that tension is a complete innocent ignorance. And basically that just reminds me of the countless conversations that I have with my students in academia, that we just need to talk about our biases, whether we hate people or we like them. Just we have to get rid of those harsh emotions we have towards certain group of people. And one of the activities that I tried with my students is to give them those anonymous index cards where they have to talk about how they feel without even putting their names in it. And we would just gather, every time we would meet, we would gather those cards with our negative emotions about how we feel about a certain group of people. And we would put them aside, then go out there and meet those people. And basically what we did is like, let's put our emotions, negative emotions aside and go out there, meet them, have conversations. Like Dr. Rash was saying, have a place where we can have our narratives meet. And it's just beautiful how learning and reaching out to those people just kind of give us that courage to kind of forget about how we were feeling about them in the first place and start building those positive, nice emotions toward those groups of people. So I do see what's happening with the Muslim community, with people that are going towards hatred or hate crimes to channel their frustration or their feelings towards a group of people. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
So I would like to share my story with you again.
Please,
so,
go ahead.
I don't know if many of you are aware about the story of the genocide against the Tutsi happened 26 years ago in Rwanda. So I was 2 years old. And my nickname is Afande. Afande is a military name, just for being polite to a military guy, just say Afande and then add the name. And that name was because I wanted to join the military and to be able to revenge. I lost like more than 60% of my member of my family, not like the siblings. Our family, it's just cousins, uncle, and aunts and grandparents. So I lost 6 of them. 60% of them, and I wanted to join the military in able to revenge. Like just have a gun and come and shoot people. And even I say bye to military, but it could be okay. And with that, I got this name Afand as my nickname. When I went to in high school boarding, I did kind of commando training, still to first to defend myself, but also to protect my group survivors. So still, as one of the important fact in the violence or the genocide, us and them, it was still me, like me, the survivors community, the Tutsis and the other group who killed our people. And I want revenge. I can't have any friend from that group. And when I was 16 is when I started to write my book. But also the objective was to write the story of survivors, not the other group. And I was generalizing, like the Hutus as a group killed us. And one of my friends came to me, you said the Hutu, this is not fair. I didn't kill your family. And you are just generalizing. And this opened my eyes to not, okay, not the whole Hutu who killed us. And this made me end up to go to prison, to talk to perpetrators, to learn how they killed other people, what motivated them, the message they have. And this changed my life completely. That's how I came up with the center, to help all the people, to be able to have friends from the other group, to be able to think about something I mentioned in the beginning, a shared future. How can we have a shared future? How can we build one identity, not us and them? And this, for me, starts with Hutu and Tutsis and the tribe in Rwanda, but it is also involve everyone, white, black people, Catholic and Muslim, everyone to have one identity, which is just being a human being, just to feel that I am gifted with life, and this is the most important than anything else. But to be able to have this mindset, to talk about this, to teach hope, to teach to teach unity. This came from the very high cost, and also from sad stories and experience. Yeah. Thank you. I can't listen to you.
Thanks for sharing.
Okay, now I listen to you. Thank you.
May I share?
Yes,
my story? Is not nearly as traumatic, but I was in a situation that made me not have an identity. Most of my youth was, we were constantly moving around. I thought I was an American in other countries, and I came back to the United States and could not relate to anything I was exposed to. And so just lost a whole sense of identity, which made me become rebellious. And anything that indicated authority in this society was to be fought angrily. And I continued through my 20s with that attitude. And at one point, I realized that in fighting it, I was only giving it strength. I was giving it empowerment. It was just this really clear, boom, whoa, here I am, you know, with my signs and trying to bring about rights for the disenfranchised, but it was within that system. And it was around that time that I met Mr. Rash and the whole legacy program. And there was something about the connection between one's own identity and incorporating it into a larger society, and then seeing the unity, as you, Dieudonné, mentioned, the that we're all in this together. So then I began to have, okay, what's the positive way of doing all of this? And I went ahead and got my master's in education, started teaching ESL, English as a second language, and giving those students a sense of identity, a sense of their place in our society. That's my story.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Please go ahead.
Barney, how much time do you have in this breakout session?
I think we have another 4 minutes left.
Okay, so I have already spoken. I really have many things to talk about. So if other people have not spoken, I'd like to give them a chance. Mohammed, Devin, Sadia? No? Okay. All right, so I will go ahead then. It's not
I
a
think
story.
Mohammed unmuted himself there. One second.
Okay, all right,
No,
go
no,
ahead.
go. We want to hear you. Go.
Just a little bit. I'll try to make it short. And this is not about my story. I have been lucky. But one thing about identity, hearing Dieudonné's story, thank you very much for that. And also Yvonne's, your story. Somehow I feel that at the very beginning where the narrative shifts, there has to be that loss of identity that you were having. So for Dieudonné, it was at the very beginning, losing that identity of your tribe, and I'm not this person anymore. For you, it was losing that identity of that I'm not that rebel anymore. So that loss of identity clears the space for other narratives, other stories to come in. So my point from all this discussion, or my understanding from what all this discussion is, the importance of not sticking to one identity very strongly. Even if that is a good identity in our definition, like from a rebel to a uniter, I am a uniter. That's an identity, and that can be too strong. Or I am a Muslim, or I am a Sufi, or so I think that space where identity is lessened, that's where the transition can happen. And good identity and bad identity, I mean, who are we to decide what is good? It's just based on the perspective. So that is something that has come up, and I just wanted to share that it's that space at the very bottom where you are no longer that. That's where other narratives can come in, I guess. And so, being fluid in my identity at this point, who knows?
Thanks for sharing.
Thank
Mohammed,
you.
did you have anything you wanted to add?
Okay,
In our
just
last
in
few
1
seconds?
minute. Yeah, just in 1 minute, I see that as doctor said before, everything is in acceptance. When we accept each other and accept that everyone around me is different, and accept that he have his own ideas, his own thoughts. So when I accept each other and share our ideas, it will solve everything that we talked about. It's on.
Thank you so much for sharing.
I have an idea off of that I've been thinking about. I think we're about to end, but not only accept, but also celebrate. I think Black Lives Matter is a huge movement in the US right now, and one of the responses is all lives matter, but the point of Black Lives Matter is that we're celebrating those differences and recognizing that we don't all have the same experience. And so by not emphasizing one specific group's experience, you're not allowing them that full capacity to be celebrated and recognized and
It's
accepted.
steps. We have to recognize it's steps, always
Right.
steps. Yeah.
All
right.
Well, I will see you guys in the main room. Catch you later.
Okay, we're all back in here. Nice.
So we could just do a quick share out once everyone comes back. It looks like almost everyone's back. Be somebody from Noé's group can just kind of share what you guys talked about so we can hear a little bit about what went on in that group.
Someone else than me, okay?
I think that we had a really nice combination of people in the group. That was nice. We spent some time introducing ourselves and learning how to say hello. That was our start. But we also then just went through like stories of belonging, stories of hope, stories of safe spaces, role modeling. So we shared stories of those examples. It was very nice. It's a nice way to connect.
Thank you. And our group, is there anyone who wants to share out? Otherwise I will, no problem. I can do it? Okay, all right, cool. Yeah, so we had a conversation about personal stories as well. And Raja brought up a great point about we just have to have these difficult conversations. And then Ishrat mentioned, you know, that there's something about actually both Ishrat and Yvonne talked about like losing identity and how identity shifts have a lot to do with, you know, people's ultimate behavior. And Dieudonné shared his like more in depth of his story about how he sort of shifted from a position of sort of anger into one of more constructive constructive role in society. And then Mohammed mentioned that we have to kind of accept that we have these differences and then sort of build constructively from there. So that was sort of an overview of what we talked about. And I'll just hand it over to Noé for any sort of closing remarks you might have or any call to action or anything.
Yes, I will share my screen again. So we discussed about feeling of belonging, hope, opportunities, safe space. I have here a PowerPoint explaining how in my research I observed those different phenomena. I don't think we have the time for that today, but if you send an email to the email address I will show you after, I can send you the whole PowerPoint and you can have the idea, the gist of it. But yeah, feeling of belonging is important because it generates a lifestyle and an identification pattern. Ultimately, this lifestyle shapes actions because you want to replicate what someone does or what you do in a group. Hope is important because those are beliefs, sense of a mission. It propels you to act, but also shows you a certain path to follow, especially role models. They can make you hope, and then you want to mimic them. Like you could want to go in the steps of Dr. King. You could want to go in the steps of Nelson Mandela. Those are role models, but I want to follow the steps of certain of my fellows. I admire Dieudonné's work, and I hope to also be able to do right by him and to do right by so many other people who I admire and they're role models for me. Then opportunities, they are structural, financial, they're essential. But the first opportunity is recognition. That's the opportunity to hope. And then there is the opportunity to harvest hope, which is financial support, political recognition, economic recognition, a place, a seat at the table. And this has to come from top. This has to come from the top. But here, us down there, we have to ask for it. We have to indignate ourselves to ask for it. And the safe space, finally, we saw that it was regulated by norms, and it is characterized by an imaginary world that allows for safety and control. And so in safe space, there happens cultural fluency. You can exchange ideas with each other in a peaceful manner, even though you don't agree. So you can express yourself, you control your story and your truth and your narrative. But in the end, because you listen to other people's story, you have a transformative potential. You learn, you see that you have similarities, you have the similar pain, or you have a similar annoyance. And so you learn from each other, but you share those stories in a place where you don't feel aggressed. And right now in the US, as Mary said, it is important to go to the development of those safe space. Now it's not as simple as that. Developing safe space is years of work, but it requires first humility, values, and vulnerability. And then the last one is role model. Role models are peers, particular individuals, a community with a lifestyle can be a role model for you. I hope that all the stories I told you today and all the stories that you told me and that you told each other about young people changing their behavior can be role model stories. They show an alternative and they act as a tale of success or of caution. Don't do this, do that. They give hope and they give you a path to follow because you analyze those stories and realize what is the mechanism that leads you to change this narrative. So you mimic action and you mimic the lifestyle of role models. In conclusion, I would like to say that we have transition points. Those are identity and the feeling of belonging. Changes in identity and in feeling of belonging are essential in shaping action by changing the lifestyle of people, and the development of resilience, which is self-confidence and the capacity to take action as an individual, which is mostly possible if you're recognized and if you're valued by someone. If we give you a role, Hannah gave one of his students a role in his dance school in Palestine, and then this student started to change his behavior because he was given a purpose. And then we have enabling elements. Those are essential structural and social factors that allow the transition points to take place. The enabling elements can be contextual factors, so an economic boost, change in political system, anything that changes in the institutions and in the norms of society. The safe space, if you have a safe space, you can finally share your story and have this cultural fluency when you hear each other's stories and build a dialogue. And vulnerability, which has to come from you. You have to make yourself vulnerable to be able to listen to the stories. Learn how to say hello in your brother's language. Learn how to say hello in this language. Learn how to communicate with them, because there is no tongue like the mother tongue. And once you learn that, once you make yourself vulnerable, show your weaknesses, because by showing your weaknesses, you become stronger. You learn from each other and the others become stronger as well. And I would encourage you to contact me, share your stories through this email address, youthinconflictstories@gmail.com. I will collect all those stories, read them all. Hopefully I will give you an answer as fast as possible. I think it will take maximum 2 weeks to answer you because I'm usually very, very busy. And then those stories, they will be shared. I will think with my network here in Amsterdam, in Europe, in Sweden, at the UNESCO, at the Peace Palace, to try and share those stories. And, you know, right now we are with Dieudonné in the process of trying to write a book, a manual for youth agency. And those stories can be interesting because they can give us very nice insights into this manual. And eventually I will end up contacting you and we can have a chat together about your story, and you will effectively become part of the change, because telling your narrative is changing the narrative, and changing the narrative is already making a change. Yeah, and that's it. That's all I have to say for today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Noé, and also to Dieudonné for coming out today and sharing their experience and thoughts on this really pressing topic. And we noticed that there are a lot of new people on the call, and we welcome you so much here. And just a reminder that you can follow us at Legacy on social media, and please reach out to learn more about our work. You're very welcome. And we have another call coming up next week, which is on a different topic, but you're all welcome back. It's all on gamification and how that can improve our work in nonprofits and corporations. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys all again as well. And I'll hand it over to Mr. Rash for any last comments.
Thank you, Bernie. Thanks everyone for coming and joining. Thank Noé and Dieudonné for your contribution to our knowledge and to our experience. The importance of role model that you spoke about so much, we shouldn't forget that the role models in our family are very important, because we need to see flaws in our role models as well as their strengths. And it's very easy to see flaws in our own family. And we have to see how people deal with those flaws. And so it's important to know that we're all human beings and we all have something to change and something to repent for. But our role models have a special courage despite those flaws. Everyone I've met in that capacity, and I've been blessed to meet so many people like Dr. King and Desmond Tutu and others, have always spoken openly about their flaws, their struggle, and their hopes. And what we can realize is that safe space can be in the company of others of common experience and common vision, part of a spiritual community as well as a cultural, political, and social community. Someone, I'll tell you, I'll end with a story. Someone once asked a wise person, he said, "I've heard that humanity is suffering from an ailment which prevents men and women from seeing the truth, from knowing themselves. What is the main symptom?" And that wise person answered, "The first symptom is to believe that one is not suffering from the illness at all. But when it really starts to take hold, the patient may agree that they are ill, but now insists that the disease that they have is anything other than what it actually is." So we can contemplate that and understand how we deal with these issues and how we deal with what we think is reality. I think it's time to admit the truth and the truths around us. So thank you very much for coming. Join us again. We look forward to seeing your names, your faces, time and time again in our forum. And God bless you all. Bless you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rash, and thank you all for joining. And if you have to jump off now, feel free, no problem. But if you have a little time and you want to stick around and just chat, no problem either. We'll keep the room open for about 15 minutes. Oh, wait, Teresa, go ahead. She wants to take a picture.
All right, everyone, just before you all hang up, we like to take our weekly screenshot of everyone that we might share on social media or just send out to say thank you for joining. So if you want to turn your camera on, go ahead and flip it on and I'll give you a countdown. All right, so it's coming in 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So feel free to hop off if you need to. Otherwise, join us for a 15-minute chat. Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks for joining. Bye.
Actually, thank you for this forum. Always feeling happy when I'm here.
Oh, yeah, you're very welcome here. And thanks for sharing in the smaller group as well. That was really inspiring to me. Yeah.
You are in legacy, do a lot of efforts. So thank you always.
Really appreciate it.
جزاك الله خير سيدي. جزاك الله خير.
شكرا. Thank you.
عفوا.
Mohammed is a good example of a leader in Egypt. And Egypt has seen its share of conflicts during your youth age range. So you've always been positive and uplifted your peers. So I've seen that.
I just tried.
Why don't you tell Mohammed something about what you do?
Okay, I'm just now I'm one of the presidential program for the president of Egypt. I'm the youngest one in youth department. I'm also studying law at my faculty, law and Sharia, Islamic studies and religion, and Sufism and like that. So I'm just trying in my community to make hope and peace for everyone around me, to just make a difference. I worked with my group in our program to on women's rights in Egypt, children's rights, children abuse. We are trying to do our best as much we can, and I hope in my future, after my last semester, I'm in my last semester in my university. So I hope when I finish, I can do more, and thank you for. I gained a lot of experience when I came in America and GYV and met you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
And I see you're back, Mohammed. The other's Mohammed Senusi. Yeah, welcome back.
It's too long from the last time.
Yeah, you're also based in Egypt, right?
Yes, but I'm from Luxor, from the south.
Oh, gotcha.
Maybe the other Mohammed from Cairo?
I'm from Cairo, yeah, I'm from Giza.
Welcome. We are from
What's
the old capital and you are from the new capital.
What's the driving distance between those two?
It's like 12 hours.
Oh, okay. So maybe you don't want to do that.
1 hour flight.
Oh, okay, that's better.
But in Loser is very, very nice. It's very beautiful.
Awesome. And Tanya, where are you calling in from? Oh, I think you're muted.
I am. Yes, Taina. I'm calling from the Bronx, New York. I'm from New York.
Oh, welcome. That's great.
Thank you.
How did you find out about the forum, Taina?
I actually heard about it from, I believe it's from Ruth Perez, and I think she heard it from you. I'm not too sure. But I was recommended to attend because it's something of my interest. I'm really interested in youth development and peace resolution and things like that. So I'm happy I joined in.
Yeah, thank you so much. You're always welcome.
Thank you.
Are you doing that work in Brooklyn now? Is it Brooklyn or Bronx? Sorry.
I'm from the Bronx. I am not doing the work yet. I'm originally from the Bronx. I'm actually just finished my master's degree in social work. So I'll be heading back to the Bronx very soon.
Oh,
Great.
wow.
Terrific.
Wow.
It's a lot.
You look Egyptian.
Sorry. Go ahead, please. So, Taina, we have a lot of alumni who've come through our programs in New York. One of them is a teacher in the public high schools. And she's been, in terms of listening to stories, just the COVID-19 cessation of schools for those young people in low-income neighborhoods, and the inability really to keep up with it virtually, and then losing family members, and this all on top of each other has been very traumatic. She says trauma, that those kids are experiencing trauma. Do you have any thoughts on what we should do for young people in New York at this time?
Yes, it is a big question, but I think that's something that we need to think about. I think it's really important to think about what we can do for the youth, because this time is very traumatic, as you said, and being trauma informed is extremely important. Understanding how trauma can impact the youth, and not only the youth, their families as well. It's going to be important work to do, and I think just giving them a space so they can be allowed to express themselves more than anything else. Like Noah had explained, narrative is very important in explaining how they're feeling during this time, and explaining what are they possibly going through. I think that's the first step. And once this is finally done, bringing them together and making sure that they have that support and they have that kind of the opportunity to get together to express themselves and try to create a change somehow in some way so they can get that power back. Because with this whole pandemic going on, a lot of power is being taken away from the youth, and not only the youth, for the world in general. So bringing back that power into the youth and their families is going to be really important.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And this actually reminds me a lot of what Raja was talking about in our group, about some of the activities that you're doing, Raja. I'd love, if you're interested, to share a little bit about that, because that was so interesting.
Of course. Well, when I started teaching when I first got here in America, I was involved in teaching the Arabic language and culture, but it was from a linguistic perspective, and I was just helping people greet each other, connect with one another. But I kind of neglected the emotions people have built up through what they have been perceiving through media, what they've been gaining growing up from other perspectives, what they've been hearing. So we started approaching students differently, which is having difficult conversations through offering them courses about only the Arab culture, not the language, where we're initiating that platform where they can all meet and as Dr. Rash was saying, have that platform where they can join their narratives. And one of the activities that we did, where I still have the cards, we would write, I would give my students anonymous index cards and ask them to put their emotions and how they feel about certain group of people, what they've learned about those group of people, and anything negative that they are carrying, any negative emotions, even the first feeling they got when they first met a hijabi girl. And most of them, when I asked them how many Arab people you've met throughout your life, literally not everybody said one. So it was kind of interesting to just like see that happening. So we started having those difficult conversations, but before we initiated that, we would put our emotions in index cards, and I keep always going back to them to just be reminded of how people feel. And they would write how they feel about a group of people anonymously, literally, and we would put those cards aside and go meet those people we're afraid of having those difficult conversations with. And we would just call someone, have a guest speaker, go somewhere, have a coffee at an Arab place, meet locals, knock on the door. And one of the things that was kind of astonishing is that they started looking for people who are in their surrounding that are of an Arab origin. And they started having those conversations. And it was just amazing how they got rid of those negative emotions just by having normal conversation with people, instead of just having those perceptions that were kind of shoved into them instead of acquired through normal interactions with actual people. So it's hard. Those difficult conversations are really hard to have. And it taught me a lot myself, because I started isolating myself for some time because I wasn't ready to have those difficult conversations. And instead of just meeting people, I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody who's going to ask me about my origin, my identity. I'm just so tired. So instead of isolating myself, I started reaching out to people and volunteering in ways that let's use language and culture to connect with one another. Let's mediate between small communities. Let's look out for our refugee population. Let's be the voice that they don't have. They don't use English quite effectively when they're trying to talk about their emotions. So let's be that voice for them. And we started building those small communities where we are just being the advocates for some change in the educational system, and hopefully it will work.
Thank you. I wonder kind of like where, if you want to share on it, like where that pivot point came for you in your life, because I mean it is so much easier to just be like, I'm gonna stay in my own corner. I'm, like you said, just kind of isolate. I mean it's easier because, like you said, those things sound incredibly frustrating. Mm-hmm. And like, why reach out if maybe you don't have to, and it's just more comfortable. So where was that like change point for you?
The change point came when I started seeing that those biases and emotions started affecting my family. So I had some family members that would avoid going out in public places with me because they did not want to identify as Muslims. Mm-hmm. So, and I was like, it's getting into my family, and I think I have to do something about it. So instead of having those difficult conversations with my family members, I approached them the same way. I would volunteer my time to educate people outside. And then when my family members saw that change is taking place, people are ready to have those conversations. They're ready to get rid of that innocent ignorance. Most of the people, they don't know. So instead of just being frustrated and getting in that defensive mode, if somebody asks me about my identity, I'm like, no, I'm literally not ready to talk about it right now. I'm just trying to grab my grocery from the store. I'm not in Walmart to talk about where I'm from, or I'm not at a school to just, and even my 6-year-old started asking me questions like, am I Moroccan? Because I'm originally from Morocco. And he would say, Mommy, am I Moroccan or American? And just seeing that taking place within my family, I said, I have to do something about that. I have to have those difficult conversations and teach my family and my kids also to just engage in those conversations and build a community.
Yeah, it sounded like a necessity at that point.
It
really, yeah. But it's also a lot of courage. So like, that's just amazing to me.
it takes a good toll on us. So alhamdulillah, we're working through that.
Anyway.
I have to leave, but thank you, Raja, for your story. It echoes a lot with what the Turkish and Moroccan communities are experiencing in the Netherlands. You know, usually most of them are born in Amsterdam, and people ask them, where are you from? And they say, I'm from Amsterdam. So you come out Amsterdam. And they say, no, but where are you really from? And you say, well, yes, I was born in Amsterdam. And you know, there is the same issue here. And here we have the luck in where we live, Judana and I, we live in the same building. We have the luck to live near the Turkish and Moroccan neighborhoods. And it's so lively, I really like it. But you hear those stories all the time. And it really saddens me. But I really think that what you do is really nice. And I really hope that you take contact with me, because we have here in our university people who are working with the Turkish and with the Moroccan communities, and maybe those could be good ideas for them. I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe they already have all their ideas set out. I have no idea, but it's worth a shot.
I would love to collaborate on that. It's just to navigate our emotions in difficult times of crisis. When that's what I keep telling my family members and friends. We take a lot of things for granted once we are in our comfort zone. I never had to explain myself or say where I'm from or what my religion is growing up where I grew up in Morocco, with all the absurdities that every country has. We kind of adapt to our misfortunes. we learn how to navigate our own cultures. We know how to avoid people who are kind of toxic. We know how to reach out for positivity. But once we are placed in those foreign environments, we come with that extreme excitement that we're here to share our culture, but we don't know how people actually perceive our culture. And that's where the pause is be so excited, do it from your part, but also learn how people feel about you. And that way you can create that kind of balance where you're giving them what they need instead of serving as an entertainment, where it's so exotic. You're there to just talk about your culture, but no, you're there to actually educate them about all those missing pieces that they have forgotten about when they were only exposed to negativity in the media.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. It's but what you're doing, how I see it, it's you're preparing for dialogue. You're preparing people for dialogue the same way peace has to be prepared. Peace is usually portrayed as easy, but peace is sometimes even harder than conflict. It is harder than conflict. And peace has to be prepared, and people have to be prepared for peace, because peace can be very hurtful. And I think that part of, I mean, I see your agency in that way. There is certainly another light to it, a different way to see it. So enlighten me, and it will be very nice.
You inspired me, so thank you so much for all the work you do.
Everyone, I'm so sorry. I have class to attend now, and also really need to go to the bathroom.
Thank you for joining us. See you, Noé.
Thank you.
From Amsterdam. Lots of love, and yeah, just keep being amazing, and share your story with me. Let's get personal, not too much, but let's get to know each other. Okay, goodbye.
Bye, Noé.
Ciao.
Bye. And I see Safa is joining us too.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Me too, thank you. So Raja, where do you live? What part of the US?
Oh, I think you're Moroccan. I can see that from the last I live in Florida.
Oh, that's far.
Where do you live?
I live in DC, but right now I'm trying to make friends here, like Moroccans, you know, like
we can virtually connect. Inshallah, we can virtually connect and probably connect you with some Moroccan community in there, inshallah.
That would be great, inshallah. Yeah, sure. I'll share here my number, and then you can text me, okay? Sure.
Definitely, inshallah.
I see we also have Borrega on the call. Are you there, Borrega? Oh, maybe not yet. And Carol. Hi, Carol. Good to see you again.
Muted.
Well, thank you guys for joining us so much. And feel free to jump on back next week. It's going to be an interesting one. It's on gamification. And at first I was like, what's gamification all about? I guess, you know, like when you do those online things and it gives you badges and points. So we're going to have someone talk about the optimal ways of doing that that can really help out your nonprofit and kind of tells more of a story that's meaningful to people instead of just rewards that are like, you know, I don't know, you just get a badge or something. So it should be an interesting topic as well.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. I guess we'll see you.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you
For coming. You're always welcome. And thank you, Jodane, again. That was just really great for you to share.
Thank you. That was
all right. We'll see you guys.
Bye-bye.
Much.